Hello, everybody. I'm Thomas Potter from company Compre.com. So we have around 100 customers. These are our top customers, and we are in the AI market since the 1990s, since around 25 years. And at that time, I was told to first become naturally intelligent before studying artificial intelligence. So those were so early times. AI was so unpopular. And I was the only one to graduate in entire Germany around the year 2000 in AI. But that allowed us to win that many customers, since we are one of the top experts in this field since 25 years. Now, on this Metaverse conference, I was asked to talk about the role of AI in the Metaverse and for the Metaverse, and how it can be used to simulate things, and how Metaverse and simulation technology can be used to upgrade our socio-economic models. That's what I'm going to talk about. And some people think we're actually living in a simulation on this earth. For example, Elon Musk and many others. And some arguments are, if we were in a simulation, if we were not a simulation, then we wouldn't have these old incompetent politicians who have no relevant education for their jobs, wouldn't we? And also, if we look at the speeches and deeds of these so-called leaders, then we really find that ChatGPT yields better results than 99% of these so-called leaders. So the simulation team seems to be saving on the ChatGPT license fees. So the lives of the normal population are actually very easy to simulate. So, and if you look at what's going on about female beauty, couldn't it be that there's some teenage simulation engineers that play with the settings of what men like, and give the humanity cosmetic surgery and cosmetics, and see what happens to the shapes of women and how that develops over time, and then making fun that they contain these forever chemicals, these cosmetics, and these PFAS then convert normal men into LGBTIQ plus people. and what that means for the beauty industry and how that develops in terms of body sizes and outfits. That's a typical teenage boy joke, isn't it? So can this be reality that we're living in this actually? And implementing this metaverse actually as a simulation, for example, to improve our capitalism, is maybe the only way how Mark Zuckerberg can recoup his more than $30+ billion invested in the metaverse, after 3D headsets have been proven to be too clunky and to lead to too much headaches in every respect. So it's a typical approach of an evil billionaire to then bribe the government to buy their solution, the so-called solution, for another purpose. Here it could be the global simulation of how we could do better as a society. So this could be evaluating potentialism or PerCon Flow. My suggestion, together with colleagues, and a book will be coming out in a few months on this. There will also be a book release gala event. So this begs the question of what use the metaverse could be, if not for end users, to simulate how we can upgrade our capitalism to be less exploitative and instead allow everybody to thrive, including nature. But before I get into those specifics, I first would like to share with you my prognosis regarding the future of AI, artificial intelligence. So for that, I prepared a number of slides. First of all, you should understand that AI projects aren't that easy. Most AI you've heard about is deep learning. However, that is the most expensive and difficult technology to use. It will cost several million pounds to train these systems, and then some additional million pounds to label the data required for the training. And then the applicability of the deep learning is also very limited, mainly in the fields of natural language processing, computer vision, generative art, and etc. And these systems that model our human brains, they only store the gist of things, not all details. They forget details like we do. And then there are other AI methods that can be synergistic, but they show less progress and require deep skills and rare skills to integrate. And for many AI projects, there doesn't exist enough AI training data. So the question is, what are the most promising ways forward in AI? So the following slides show some promising directions for solving these points. So what I find fascinating is that we now have neural architecture tools. So like in IT, we have UML, Unified Modeling Languages, and corresponding UML tools for modeling all kinds of IT systems. Here in deep learning, we have these neural network design solutions like this Deep Learning Studio shown here by Deep Cognition. So there you can model it manually. There's also neural architecture search, which is automatic, which proposes you a good such model automatically. And yeah, then we have this block level design as shown here. And an example of this is ResNeXt for computer vision. For example, to detect a horse and actually come up with a name horse in text. This consists of such special neural architecture elements. For example, convolution, dense blocks, pooling, linear functions, activation functions, and so on, and many other technologies like memory functions or the thresholds functions and various mathematical functions, as you see here. So this is modeled, as you see here, with matrix mathematics. Just as an example. Then another example is here, it can be shown like these in boxes where it goes from input here to the output with a softmax function. And in Python, this is programmed like this, when you call a max pooling 1D function or conv 1D from convolution and so on. So this is actually very practical how to implement it. Then there are interesting developments like the working memory graph that go beyond simple deep learning by Microsoft. It's a transformer-based model, so using deep learning, but to improve the performance of sequential decision-making agents. Here you see classically we have a bottleneck here around the concatenate, and here this gets rid of the bottleneck and delivers data to more components or even all components. The general problem is that you don't have enough data to train your model. And there are several approaches to solve this. I like this probabilistic model here of a directed acyclic graph with weights on the edges and also weights in the nodes. And it's possible to deploy such a simple model initially, then to gain more data and then move to more complex systems. And to generate a new model, the approach is typically to start with the Gaussian model and then see what are your needs or what is your available data. Do you want to mix models? Do you want to have more dynamics? Do you need to switch elements here? Depending on the quality, if it's maybe bad to improve parts of the quality. And this gives you a rough overview of the key models around probabilistic modeling that could be used. There's a general trade-off between performance and explainability for deep learning and for other AI methods. So you find here these high-end models around deep learning have a very high prediction accuracy, but a very bad explainability. And researchers try to improve this in this direction of more explainability, but it's very hard to do. That's why people are also looking at other methods. So there we have these neural networks here with deep learning, which is part of differentiable programming, and especially PyTorch is very good in making that derivative available to programmers and to the network. And then there's an entire new discipline called probabilistic modeling in programming. At the core, there are graphic models, and there's an intersection between these two, which are variational autoencoders, VAEs. And there's also Hamiltonian Monte Carlo, HMC, which is also part of the overlap here. And then there's other Monte Carlo methods and methods, for example, with other auto-differentiable features. So there's an entire landscape that you should be aware of. Then there's many innovations that lead to megatrends in AI. I cannot present them all. They are available on our YouTube channel at Potentialism on youtube.com. I'm just giving some examples here. So it's this deep learning architecture that I discussed about is making big progress. Natural language processing, for example, with ChatGPT, as you know it, and other GPT versions. Generative AI to create image and other art, different forms of applied AI, probabilistic programming, intelligent robotic process automation to automate office applications or any other software applications you might have, AI-based avatars, AI-based operations, AI-based automated cybersecurity, trust architectures, and so on. And to summarize a typical AI project situation, especially due to all these technologies that I've shown, and there are more, we have actually quite complex situation. It's like this. So for the typical project, you start with a business strategy and the customer or company value you want to generate, the IT requirements and AI requirements, use cases, and then come up with a rough initial architecture with components and initial key data flows. So then you ask yourself the question, which AI technologies are needed or could help here? And there's an entire zoo of technologies, pretty much what I've just shown. Deep learning, but also data science, graph convolutional networks, probabilistic programming, deep reinforcement learning, but also classical rules, constraints, and many others. Then people typically ask the question, how do they map to the components and how can they be trained to the software components? So which data labeling is needed, for example? What needs to be programmed? What are key data flows for training and for inference? So this leads then to these categories of questions. So for deep learning, we could apply incremental and transfer learning to not spend these millions on creating these large models ourselves, for example, large language models, LLMs. So the idea is to use existing models and just train the increment or the transfer learning for them. For example, to adjust them from English to a dialect of English. Or similarly for German and maybe Dutch as a dialect of German. Then we could use hybrid labeling and learning methods, and that for several methods or several cycles, meaning we could maybe start initially with some rules and some probabilistic programming to have an initial model, and then additionally supply some external labeling, and then bootstrap that model basically, and apply that to several parts of the overall set of AI models. We could try to reuse data sets, especially labeled data sets, or reuse trained models, previously trained models, or generally models reuse. we should think about data science, data acquisition, and learning for data science. For example, tree models, then possibly graph modeling in the data for the graphs, then the data and heuristics for probabilistic programming. That's not such a big amount. Still, it requires some thinking. And there might be rule and constraint input, also typically manually provided. And the interesting discipline of SSL, standing for semi and self-supervised learning. Then we have deep reinforcement learning inputs and reward functions that we should think about, and many other data flows and methodological approaches. Then we finish the IT and AI architecture and come up with an overall architecture 1.0 with all components, AI and data science methods, training and inference, data inputs and flows, and then typically apply more intensive project management and then come to the implementation. And for example, then have external labeling of data, and then programming, continuous improvement, model drift detection and adjustment for model drift when putting the model into practice. So these are the key AI trends. And now I'm showing you how we can apply that for the metaverse, since we are the metaverse conference, and how we can upgrade our capitalism with those metaverse simulation outputs and insights. So generally, we have a large number of crises, not just the Corona crisis, an economic crisis, resource crisis, climate crisis, biodiversity crisis, and then possibly even a human extinction crisis. And that's why we need to do something about it. So we would need to improve by around 6.2% regarding CO2 and methane emissions each year, but we have only improved by roughly 0.9%. So we must become much better regarding what we do to our environment. The probably most convincing example is the number of days between billion-dollar disasters. Around 1980, it was around 100 days. And by 2030, we will probably have each year a billion-dollar disaster. That's because we have more extreme weather and also partly because of inflation. We would need 27 Earths by 2050 just to stem the biodiversity loss. And losing biodiversity can lead to the collapse of ecosystems, and also that we have no more input for drug development to treat infections, diseases, and so on. The overall approach is to ideate what could the future be like, create a vision of the future, and then cast it back to today, and then identify the possible steps to get toward that future. So one part of this is accelerate innovation, to think big and start small. And the bigger idea is here that we probably all prefer to have a steady growth, maybe some stagnation, but roughly a steady growth, as green line suggests. However, we are right now following more the red line, and especially Europe has seen a pretty much steady market decline regarding the market capitalization of MSCI Europe as percentage of the all world country index. And also the GDP has declined compared to these other countries. So the proposal is actually to have a capitalism 6.0 after we've already had 5 versions of capitalism. And the key ideas of potentialism or PerCon Flow are to eliminate crime and unethical work and to change the societal reward function to societal net benefit value, NBV, which is then calculated by an AI based really on the results of the output. So that means everybody would no longer be paid by their company or by their non-profit organization, but instead by the region or country in which they live, to prevent all kinds of fraud and corruption and so on. So this would unleash a lot of time and money. We would have new practical solutions in products and services instead because we have more resources available for that, and we can also find new solutions to solve climate change, diseases, poverty, and so on. So we would get to accelerated work, R&D and innovation, and we would have a complete open knowledge, no or little marketing, minimize remaining crime, prosecute this, better e-learning, brain-centric design, all types of flow, meaning flow state, and train and coach around this. We would have a science-based political system, and especially then minimal bureaucracy and automation, strategic monetary and R&D control to optimize the overall societal functioning, create strategies for all parts of politics and society, and amalgamate the best objectively optimal strategies into an overall optimal strategy. And we would also have optimized teams and organizations pretty much in the direction of sociocracy, or like Netflix does it. AIs would analyze most parts, and we would have empowered autonomous self-contained individuals and teams. And maximal cooperation, conflict avoidance, resolution, and so on. And the social support and focus on care professions as the key elements. So it can probably, for the first time, solve a number of challenges. I'm quickly going over these. And so these are essentially 16 or more big challenges, or maybe come back. So the first one is civil war, or war like in the Ukraine right now, but also everything around Earth, nature, and climate change, global warming, but also the automation job loss problem, where I have not seen any convincing solution. We have one to this problem, I think, and also to these other problems. So also the book 10 Mega Threats by Neural Rubini shows similar threats that need to be solved at the same time, pretty much. And we probably, for the first time, have analyzed all these problems in depth and come up with a solution proposal. So these are the proposals for a solution, essentially to eliminate crime and corruption, have everybody aligned with our societal goals, optimize the performance, pay correspondingly, have a central cryptocurrency or CBDC, and a completely ethical governance. And we would no longer have politicians, but instead expert teams who amalgamize the best objective strategies in each field and have that tightly monitored, and not let anybody get too powerful to not be able to abuse any of this. Yeah, and we would be paying a universal basic income, just a small basic one, but everybody should have their basic needs met to be able to contribute to their maximum in this system. And that would mean around 50% of the GDPs would be shifted to more beneficial work. So we would have a big focus on governance to really make sure that no evil intentions or corruption can lead to then abusing the system, what is probably the biggest risk. But we also took the biggest effort to mitigate that risk. So here are the core ideas to eliminate crime, corruption, misdirected incentives, adopting best practices of industry analysts, venture capitalists, investment banks, but with the good of society, always a strategy, not one's own profit maximization. AI to automate everything, and analyzes and orchestrates everything. A focus on net benefit value as the basis for payments to companies as well as individuals. Yeah, one cryptocurrency, everything maximally ethical towards a high-tech future. Yeah, these are the categories in which we try to be innovative. So the shifts are described here from a classical capitalistic economy to a PerCon Flow economy. They're shown here. So we would eliminate bureaucracy. We would no longer have startups that fail, but have projects together, staffed with the best people and optimally financed for the needs of the project. So no longer billionaires or unethical managers that can manipulate things, but everything maximally ethically and done and optimized for the societal value. Extreme liberties then instead of complex laws, because the people would be paid based on the results. And we investing right now too much time into creating complex contracts where the final output is far more important. So it would only have a few prohibitive things, like to not harm the nature or other people, and otherwise be completely freedom and democracy, but a democracy more in deciding about trade-offs, what really matters. Where there's an optimal strategy, the system would normally take the optimal strategy and not ask people about that. But people can contribute ideas about what makes an optimal strategy, what are the factors to consider, or anti-strategies or sub-strategies. Yeah, and then I have details on this, but we don't have enough time for this today. You can find more on YouTube, and all key videos have links to the materials. The website will come out soon. It's also about flow state and how to train that, how to learn that, which can make people up to 5 times more productive. We have ready AI system architectures for the knowledge management and also for the cybersecurity system to prevent attacks. And we put a focus on AI ethics and governance. And this shows how we do that. We integrate the concepts of distributed autonomous organizations, DAOs, and Web3. Use the best tech for human cooperation. Also work with NFTs and smart contracts to sell, for example, art. And we work with all the latest metaverse technologies, like here, this 3D metaverse technology. Have an architecture around 3D metaverses and blockchain at the center, as these graphics show. Yeah, we would be happy if you could join us. So to show our key values are this, that we have reality, equality, equity, justice, liberation, inclusion, and many others, maximally ethical towards a high-tech future. And yeah, thanks for listening so far. And you can find more. The best starting point is here at Potentialism on youtube.com. So www.youtube.com/@Potentialism. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.